Hi everybody, this is Jessica Carrier with the Jo Daviess Conservation Foundation, and thank you all for joining us today for our first ever Facebook Live event. We are here to talk about the fossils of Jo Daviess County. So if you have questions throughout the session, feel free to type them in, and then at the end of the session we'll get around to answering all of your questions. If you want to say which town you're from, that would be great. It would help us give a good idea of how many of our neighboring towns we have here with us today. And remember, in Illinois, our stay-at-home orders allow for outdoor recreation because we know it's really important for people to get outside right now. But right now it's also really important for you to be especially careful, dress for the weather. Right now is a time where we need to be careful not to get injured ourselves while we're outdoors. So just be safe while you're out exploring. So let's talk about the fossils found in Jo Daviess County. So a lot of Jo Daviess County looks like this behind me. You see these big hills and these deep ravines. Maybe some of you guys have something like this in your own backyard. So these deep ravines and big hills are here because this area, Jo Daviess County, and the whole Turquoise region was not flattened by glaciers during the last ice age. And because of that, we have some of the oldest exposed bedrock in the area. And if you've ever been fossil hunting before, it's really fun. A lot of times you can find a creek like this. This is a spring-fed creek. And you can just kind of come in here and flip over some of these rocks and just see what you find. Earlier today, I was out here and I actually found a little critter, little caddisfly larva. So you might be looking for fossils and find other things. There's a lot of really cool things to see if you get out. So the fossils in Jo Daviess County, I want to show you 4 different examples of the fossils. And have my pointer stick here. So these are fossils that were collected from this forest right here. This first fossil is probably one of the most common. It's like a little seashell. And there's a few different examples there. This is called a brachiopod. This brachiopod is actually an animal. Inside this seashell is a fleshy body that helps this animal move and eat. Most brachiopod species have gone extinct already, but there's still some around on Earth today. And this is one that was here in Jo Daviess County about 480 million years ago. Very cool fossil. You can find these all over. They're also in our neighboring counties of Stephenson County and Carroll County and into Wisconsin and Iowa as well. A lot of really cool brachiopods. Another fossil that's also very commonly found here in Jo Daviess County are called favosites. These kind of look like a honeycomb coral. If you look really closely, there are hexagonal shapes in these favosites. And these hexagonal shapes are created when these tubes are packed really tightly together. These tubes are made of calcium, and so they're kind of like a hard exoskeleton. And inside of each one of these holes, these hexagonal holes, lives a little tiny animal. Now, this animal's also extinct, but there are similar species that are still alive today. And these little animals that lived in there, they were called polyps. Very cool. And this is a very common fossil. And again, this one can also be found in our neighboring counties as well. And another really neat fossil that we have found here are these bryozoans. Now, these are branching bryozoans. There's one here. And they're kind of all over on these rocks, and along with these bryozoans you see other fossils on these rocks as well. These bryozoans, they're commonly mistaken for a coral because they kind of look like a coral, but they're not. If you look really closely, there are little tiny pores on the outside of these branching patterns, and inside each one of those pores lives a little tiny animal. And all of these little tiny critters, they live inside these holes in these colonies, and these colonies are in the shape of a branching pattern, like a branching coral.
Is this one here?
Yeah, yep, there's one there. And all over, there are all kinds of fossils. So even if you're looking for a certain kind of fossil, you're likely to find many different kinds. So these are bryozoans, another aquatic species. And here's another bryozoa, and this one, its colony is in a very different shape. This is more like a dome shape, or we can also call it a chocolate drop shape. These bryozoas are called Prassopora, and the same structure is found on the outside of this one here, where it has little tiny pores, little holes, and inside each one of those holes is a little tiny animal that lives in there. And they always live in colonies. Think of it like a hotel or an apartment building. Everybody kind of has their little hole that they live in, and they live in one big happy colony. It's a very cool fossil, and finding these is not as common. You really have to know what you're looking for when you find this. So these are really neat. So if you notice all of these fossils here, they are all of aquatic animals, aquatic species. That is because 480 million years ago, during the Ordovician period, Jo Daviess County was at the bottom of a shallow sea. So all of the life that was found here on the surface of the earth was all aquatic species. So just by looking at the fossil record here in Jo Daviess County, you can really tell a lot about the history of the land. It's very cool. And remember, if you go out fossil hunting, it's important to not collect them. It's nice to take pictures. If you see a cool fossil, you can pick it up, check it out, take a picture, but then go ahead and set it back down, because somebody else might come along and they might want to check out the fossil too. So take only pictures, leave only footprints. Now, if anybody has any questions, now is a great time for us to answer some of your questions. And remember, we're going to post this video later on. So if you weren't able to join us today, then you can find it on our Facebook page later on as well. So this is a really cool forested area. They're not always found in forested areas. If you live near a creek, that's another great spot to find fossils. Anywhere where there might be some exposed bedrock or exposed rock outcroppings. If you go to Horseshoe Mound, there are some rocks at Horseshoe Mound with fossils on them, and that comes from the same era, the Ordovician era. It's very cool to see the history of our land just by looking at our fossil record. Geologists have been studying fossils for a long time, and they have really learned about how the plates on Earth have moved, and the different ice ages have come in and really shaped the area of Jo Daviess County. And you'll notice if you're driving around Jo Daviess County, it's very hilly like this. If you go a little bit further east towards Stockton and Freeport, it's a little bit less hilly over there, but a lot of the same fossils can actually be found there. But it's more likely that they're buried under that layer of topsoil. Here in Jo Daviess County, we didn't have glaciation covering this area, so we don't have that glacial till that was deposited over a lot of the areas east and west of Jo Daviess County. So it's a really beautiful area. Just a little bit ago, I was finding fossils here, and I'll show you this one fossil I found. And I am just learning as I go about these fossils. And on this one, you can see, this is another very common one here. This here is, I've learned that this is called a bivalve clam. It's some kind of a clam that lived here, probably during the same era, the Ordovician era. This is very common. And I often see these fossils in groupings as well. So if you find one, you'll probably find 10 or more. So keep an eye out for that one, because that will often lead to more fossils if you're out hunting. Now, if you're just joining us, I want to show you these fossils here again, because some of you guys maybe are joining a little bit later. So let's go back and show these here. Now, these are the Brachiopods again. Kind of a seashell fossil. And again, they have like this fleshy body on the inside that they use to help move around and capture food. These Brachiopods are a little bit different than the clam in that this one is a symmetrical seashell. So that's kind of a main characteristic of these Brachiopods, is they're very symmetrical. Very common. I'm sure many of you, if you've ever been looking at rocks, you probably have found little seashell imprints like this before. And then this one here, the phagocytes, these hexagonal shapes. This is where those little animals live inside each one of these little hexagonal holes. And each one of these hexagonal holes is actually a tube. It's a long tube that the animal lives in. And then the little animal, it's called a polyp. The polyp will come out, it has tentacles. The polyp comes out, extends its tentacles, and then it captures its prey. So its prey is usually like larvae and things. And then the bryozoans. So this is the branching bryozoans. And on the surface of these branching bryozoans, you can see little pores. And these pores, inside each one of those little pores lives a little tiny animal.
Okay, we have a question here from Shauna. Can you give tips again on where to find them and what to look for?
Oh, sure. So if you're going to look for fossils, the best place to find them is, a lot of times there's water will erode away, maybe in a ravine like this, but maybe it's a creek, the side of a creek bed, anywhere where there's some exposed rock. Usually waterways help to expose that old rock. And I know especially in the late spring, after a few rains have gone through, a lot of the leaves and things have washed down, and you can really see the bedrock a lot better. And that is the time to go fossil hunting. Or if you just want to go to Horseshoe Mound, there are rock outcroppings at the Cook Overlook. Let's see. There are also fossils kind of on some of the landscaping as well. Or if you have gravel in your driveway, that's another spot you could find fossils as well. So fossils are really anywhere that rocks could be. So, and remember, if you're going to go out looking for fossils, remember that to just leave them there. Take nothing but pictures, leave nothing but footprints. So it's always nice to leave them there for the next person that comes along. So if anybody has any questions, there's a lot of neat things to see here. And remember, Jo Daviess County has a lot of the same fossils that Stevenson County and Carroll County and into Dubuque County. This is a great thing to do when you're at home, trying to keep your distance from other people. It's a great way to get outside. if teachers are at home and looking for a way to continue their education, teachers and parents are at home looking for a way to continue education, you could have your students find fossils. Maybe you do a research project on a fossil. Fossils can tell us a lot about the natural history of the world, and it gets people outside and enjoying nature. Staying curious is key.
Okay, we have a question.
Okay.
Do you know anything about blue shells and the pumice on Willow Road?
I don't actually know anything about the pumice on Willow Road. I wish I could answer that question. Sorry. If there are other questions, we can... Okay. Well, I hope you guys get outside, and while you're out, there's a lot of neat things to see. The birds are out, the sun is out this morning. It's just a really nice day to get out, and I know everybody's trying to keep their distance, and sometimes staying cooped up inside the house is tough. So even if you go out looking for fossils in your driveway, you can still learn a lot about your history in the area just by looking at fossils. Thank you all very much for joining us today for our first ever Facebook Live event. We are going to post this video on our Facebook a little bit later, and if you have additional questions, you can always ask questions in the comments section too.